Hey, Liam here, and in this video we'll continue to juice up our game by adding screen shake camera. We will also make a orange screen that will pop up for a short moment each time the player takes damage. These small tweaks will, without a doubt, add an extra layer of life to our game. It will give the player the feeling that his actions have a real impact. So without further ado, let's create that right away, starting with the screen shake. There are two main ways of adding screen shake to a game. The first one is by coding it all out, and the second is to simply use animations. In this tutorial, we'll be showing you how to do the latter. Throughout our experience creating video games, we have found out that this is a much simpler and for the most part more customizable solution. We will select our main camera object and we will open up the animator window. In here, we'll press the Create New Animation button. We are going to need two animations. The first one we will call Idle. This one will have just one keyframe with the default position of the camera. So I'll press the record button and I'll just type inside of the inspector the default position that I want my camera to be at. Once we have got our default position saved, we will create the shake animation. With the shake animation selected and the record button on, we will now animate our shake. So there are a ton of different camera shakes that you can create. So I'm going to walk you through one that we often use in our action games. So after 2 or 3 milliseconds, we will decrease the size value of our camera so that it zooms in a little. Don't overdo it, otherwise the shake effect will look overdone and the player might feel a little nauseous playing your game. So make it subtle. That being said, you'll easily be able to tweak this later if you don't like it. Then I will copy and paste the keyframes a couple milliseconds after so that the zoom effect stays for a little longer. One last time, we will advance of a couple milliseconds, and this time we will set the camera back to its default position. You can now press the play button and have a feel of what you have made. Some other ideas of camera animations that you can create can just be simply to move it left and then right. You can also add some rotation in here and even mix up a little bit of zooming, rotation and moving for some more crazy effects. So just play around with it until you find something that you like and that will suit your game. Now all we have to do is play the animation each time we would like to have some screen shake. First of all, let's open up the animator window to set up our animation transitions. So I'll create a new trigger parameter that I will call shake. Then we'll create a transition from the idle animation to the shake animation. With the transition arrow selected, we can then add our shake trigger as a condition for the change. So for a quick reminder, the default animation that our camera will be playing is the idle animation, and each time we will set our shake trigger, the shake animation will play. We also need to add a transition from the shake animation back to the idle animation, so that we can go back to our default state once the animation has finished. We don't need any particular conditions on this transition here. I will also go inside of the settings drop down and set the exit time to 1. This will make sure that the entire animation plays before transitioning back to the idle animation. I will also set the transition duration to 0. I'll now go back to the transition from the idle to the shake, and on this one here we don't want any exit time, so I'll uncheck that button. And like for the other one, we will set the transition duration to 0. The last step is to call the animation from our script. So I want some camera shake when the player shoots a projectile. So I'll go inside of the weapon script. In here I will create a private animator variable called camera anim. Then inside of the start function, I'll set the variable to be equal to camera.main.getComponentAnimator. So camera.main will return the camera in the scene, and then we are fetching the animator component that is attached to our camera. We will now find a place where we are instantiating the projectile, and right underneath it I will write cameraAnim.setTrigger. Then inside of the parentheses I'll write the name of the trigger that we just created a moment ago, and we called it shake. Save your script and let's test this out inside of Unity. So as you can see, the game feels already that much better just with a simple screen shake. Don't hesitate to add screen shake in other places. The last task for today is to create a simple hurt panel that will appear for a couple milliseconds each time the player takes damage. So we will start off by creating a UI panel element. By default, we will set the color to be fully transparent. We will also be using animations to make it turn orange. So I'll select the panel and I'll create a idle and a hurt animation just like we did for our main camera. I'll then select the idle animation and just make sure that our panel is completely transparent. Then inside of the hurt animation, with the record button set on, I'll advance of a couple milliseconds and I'll give it a nice orange color for this game, and then we will set of course the transparency at around 50%. Remember that we never want to blind the user completely, so we will make it a little bit transparent so that he can still see even if this effect will just last for a split second. Then I'll copy and paste the frames a few milliseconds later so that the effect can last for a little bit of time. And of course we will advance once more and set it back to be completely clear. Okay, now we will go back inside the animator, we will create the shake trigger, then we have to create the transitions from the idle to the hurt and from the hurt to the idle. For the first transition, we will make sure that there is no exit time and no transition, and of course we will choose the hurt trigger for the condition, and from the second transition going from the hurt back to the idle, we will make sure that the exit time is set to 1, the transition set to 0, and that's it. Now inside of the player script, we will need a reference to the animator component that is attached to our hurt panel. So for that, I'm just going to create a public animator variable called hurt panel. After that, we'll go inside of our take damage function and we'll type hurt panel.setTrigger and we will pass in our hurt trigger. Awesome, let's save our script and test this out. As you can see, just with these two small tweaks, our game feels so much better and impactful. Amazing work guys. In the next video, Noah will teach you how to make an awesome cursor. I'll see you soon.